My family used me to pay $16,000 in my golden child brother's debts, but when they kicked me out for him, I let the bank take their house and they begged. Now I own it, and I evicted my brother. I'm 27 years old. I work in digital marketing. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened last year basically made me realize I'd been living like an idiot for years. Like, literally paying for my family to treat me like garbage. I know it sounds dramatic, but by the time you get to the end, you'll understand why I'm saying it like that. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid and my brother Marcus was like the prince of the family. Marcus is 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, he was always the favorite, you know, the one who could do whatever he wanted without consequences. I could get straight A's in school and my parents would barely notice, but Marcus would get a C and they'd celebrate it like he'd won a Nobel Prize. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, my mom would make his favorite dessert and my dad would give him extra money as a reward for trying hard. When I got good grades, my mom would say something like, "Oh, that's nice, honey, and keep watching TV." The thing is, I grew up thinking that was normal. You know what I mean? Like, I assumed that's how families were, and that maybe Marcus was special in some way. I didn't understand. My dad was always quieter, like he avoided conflict, so he never said anything when my mom obviously favored Marcus. I remember one Christmas when I was like 12 and Marcus was 16. He got a brand new laptop, one of the expensive ones, a MacBook Pro, I think, and I got clothes and some books. My mom said Marcus needed it for college, but the truth is he only used it to play video games and watch movies, never did homework on it or anything. When it came time to go to college, my parents paid for everything for Marcus, dorm, tuition, food, everything. He went to an out-of-state university, a private one that cost like $40,000 a year, and my parents took out loans and used their savings to pay for it all. Marcus graduated after 6 years. Yeah, 6, because he failed a bunch of classes and changed majors like 3 times, with a degree in some business thing he basically never used. By the time it was my turn to go to college, my parents told me they had no money, that Marcus's loans had left them with nothing, so I had to get scholarships and work part-time to pay for the state university I went to. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret working hard, but it hurt to see how Marcus had everything handed to him on a silver platter, while I had to stay up late studying and working at the same time. I graduated in 4 years with honors, got a decent job in digital marketing at a company in North Carolina, where we lived, and decided to stay at home with my parents for a while to save money. They were already retired by then, my dad from his construction job and my mom from working at a school, and they basically lived off their Social Security and a small pension. The house was paid off, or so I thought at the time, so expenses weren't that high. My parents told me to stay as long as I needed, that the house was big, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, nothing fancy but decent, and that I was welcome there anyway. This is where things get interesting, I guess. About 6 months into living there, my mom started casually mentioning that it would be good if I helped with some expenses. You know, electricity, water, internet, those things. It seemed totally reasonable to me, honestly, because I was making good money and living practically for free. So I started paying the utility bills, like $300 a month or so. Then my mom mentioned that the house insurance and property taxes were expensive, and that if I could help with that too, it would be amazing. By that point, I'd been living there for like a year, and my parents started telling me things like, "Someday this house will be yours anyway, so think of this as an investment." My dad told me the same thing, like, "You're the one who's here with us, the one taking care of us, so it makes sense that the house will be yours when we're gone." I'm not gonna lie, that made me feel good, you know? For the first time in my life, I felt like my parents valued me, that they saw me as the reliable son. Marcus by then was living in Austin, Texas, with his wife, Olivia, working at some mediocre sales job, and basically no contact with the family except for occasional calls on birthdays and Christmas. He never visited, never asked how my parents were doing. Nothing. I was the one who took them to the doctor, the one who fixed things around the house when they broke, the one who made sure they had everything they needed. So yeah, I started paying more things. Property taxes were like $2,500 a year, insurance another $1,200, plus utilities and groceries I bought for the house. In total, I was spending like $800 to $1,000 a month keeping the house running. But honestly, I didn't mind, because I thought I was securing my future and helping my parents. I felt good about myself, like I was finally doing something important. This continued for years, literal. I was 23 when I started paying the bills, and I kept doing it until I was 26. During all that time, Marcus stayed in Austin doing his thing, and my parents barely talked about him except to say things like, "Oh, Marcus is so busy with work," or "Olivia and Marcus are thinking about having kids soon." I thought everything was fine, that I'd found my place in the family, and that my parents finally appreciated me. But then, like a year and a half ago, my mom started acting weird. Like, she'd ask me questions about when I was planning to move out, if I'd thought about looking for my own place, that kind of thing. At first, I ignored it because I thought she was just being curious. But the questions became more frequent and more direct. One day we were having dinner, and my mom suddenly blurted out, "Marcus and Olivia are thinking about moving back to North Carolina." I thought it was weird that she mentioned it out of nowhere like that, but I just said something like, "Oh, that's nice. It would be good to have them closer." But my mom continued. She said Marcus was tired of Texas, that he missed the family, that Olivia wanted to be closer to her own family who also lived in the area. And then she said, "And they're going to need a place to stay while they look for a house, so they'll probably stay here with us for a while." That's when I started feeling like something didn't add up, but I didn't say anything yet. I thought, well, the house has 3 bedrooms, I have one, my parents have another, and the third is being used as a storage room, so I assumed Marcus and Olivia would stay there temporarily. But no, turns out my mom had other plans. Like 2 weeks after that conversation, my parents sat me down in the living room and told me we needed to talk. My mom started by saying they'd been thinking a lot about the house situation and that they felt it was time for me to look for my own place. I was like, what? Because literally a year ago they'd told me the house was going to be mine. My dad wasn't saying anything, just looking at the floor like he always did when there was conflict. My mom kept talking. She said Marcus and Olivia were moving back in 2 months and that they needed space, that the house wasn't big enough for all of us. I asked her, "What about the storage room?" And she said Marcus and Olivia were going to need that room too, that they were going to use one bedroom to sleep and another as an office because they were both going to work from home. I said, "Mom, I've been paying the bills for this house for years. You yourself said it would be mine someday." And she just responded, "Well, yeah, but that's in the future, not now. And Marcus needs our help right now." I couldn't believe it. Literally, I was speechless. I asked if they expected me to stop paying the bills if I moved out, and my mom said, "Well, no. We were hoping you'd keep helping because the truth is, we need that money for expenses, but Marcus and Olivia are going to help too." That sounded like pure bullshit to me, you know? Marcus had never helped with anything in his life. Why would he start now? But my parents insisted. They said it would only be temporary, that Marcus just needed a few months to get established and then he'd find his own house. I tried to reason with them. I really did. I told them it wasn't fair, that I'd been there for them for years, while Marcus did nothing, and that now they were kicking me out to give him my place. My mom got defensive, said she wasn't kicking me out, that she was just asking me to take a step toward independence, and that anyway I was already 26 years old and should have my own place. I reminded her that she herself had told me to stay, that the house would be mine, and she just said, "Things change, honey. You have to understand that Marcus is your brother and family helps each other." That hurt more than I can explain, you know? Not because they were asking me to leave, but because it became super clear that they'd never really valued me. All that shit about the house will be yours someday was just a way to keep me there. Paying the bills. I was convenient while Marcus wasn't around, but the moment he decided to come back, I stopped mattering. I had like 2 months to find a place, and during that time the atmosphere in the house was horrible. My mom acted like everything was normal. Talked excitedly about Marcus and Olivia moving back, decorating the storage room and buying new things for the house. I barely talked to her. I was angry and hurt and honestly didn't know what to say. My dad tried to talk to me once, said he understood I was upset, but that I had to understand Marcus was also their son, and they wanted to help him. I told him I was also their son, and that I'd been helping them for years. But he just sighed and said, "Life isn't always fair." I found a small apartment not too far from there, a studio that cost $900 a month. It wasn't a big deal, but it was mine. You know what I mean? The day I moved out was weird. My parents didn't even help me pack or load my stuff. My mom was busy cleaning my old room for Marcus, and my dad said he had back pain. I hired some guys to help me move my furniture, and I left that house on a Saturday night, like at midnight, because I didn't want to see my parents. And this is where things get interesting. Or, well, where I finally grew up and stopped being an idiot. That night, after moving out, I blocked my parents on my phone. I also blocked Marcus, even though he hadn't even bothered to call me during all this drama. I decided that if they wanted Marcus to live there and for me to pay the bills, they could go to hell. So, I also called all the utility companies and told them I no longer lived at that address and to cancel the automatic debit from my bank account. The first few days were liberating. Honestly, I felt good for the first time in months, like I was finally taking control of my life. But like 2 weeks in, the messages started. My mom managed to contact me from a neighbor's phone, left like 5 voicemails saying why had I stopped paying the bills, if I was trying to punish them, that Marcus had just arrived and now there was no electricity or internet. I deleted the messages without listening to them completely. Then they started showing up at my work. Yeah, literally they went to my office. My mom came in crying, saying she didn't understand why I was doing this to them, that they were my parents, and I had an obligation to help them. I told her in front of my coworkers that she had decided to kick me out to give Marcus my place, and that if Marcus was so special, then he could pay the bills. She said Marcus was looking for work and didn't have money yet, and I told her that wasn't my problem. My boss had to ask them to leave because they were causing a scene. About a month and a half went by, and during that time, I kept blocking all contact, attempts. I blocked new numbers, blocked social media accounts, everything. But then I got a call from Aunt Clara, who's my mom's cousin, and who had always been like the family gossip. Normally I wouldn't have answered her, but I was in a weak moment, I guess. Aunt Clara started saying she needed to talk to me urgently, that the situation at my parents' house was terrible and that I needed to fix things. I told her I had nothing to fix, that my parents had made their decision and now they had to live with the consequences. But then Aunt Clara dropped something that left me frozen. She said, "Your mom told me they took out a second mortgage on the house like 2 years ago to help Marcus and Olivia with a financial problem they had, and that you've been paying that mortgage without knowing it." I didn't understand at first. I asked her what she meant, and she explained that Marcus and Olivia had had big debts in Texas, like credit cards and loans, and that my parents had taken out $40,000 against the house to help them pay everything off. That the monthly payment on that second mortgage was like $400, and that my parents had been hiding it in the general expenses I was paying. I felt dizzy, literal. I told Aunt Clara I had to hang up, and I did. I sat in my apartment trying to process what I just heard. I went to my bank the next day and asked to see all my statements from the past 3 years. I hired an accountant to help me review everything, and sure enough, when we added up all the payments I'd been making, I'd been paying way more than what the normal house expenses should cost. The accountant estimated I'd paid like $9,000 or $10,000 of that second mortgage. Without knowing it, I was furious, angrier than I'd been in my entire life. Not only had they used me to pay their bills, but they'd used me to pay Marcus's debts, the same Marcus they'd kicked me out for. It was so absurd it almost made me laugh, but I couldn't laugh because I was too angry. Like 2 more months went by, and then I got a call from the bank that had the mortgage on my parents' house. They asked if I still lived at that address, and when I said no, they told me they'd been trying to contact the owners because they were 3 months behind on payments and the house was in foreclosure process. I told them I wasn't the owner of the house, that it was my parents, but the bank representative said I was listed as an alternate contact on the account. That's when I knew I had all the power. You know what I mean? My parents had trusted so much that I'd keep paying the bills that they had no plan B. Marcus obviously wasn't paying anything, and they didn't have enough money to cover the mortgage with their pension and Social Security. The house was going to foreclosure in a few months if nobody paid. I unblocked my parents' phone and called them. My mom answered almost immediately. She sounded desperate. She started begging, saying they were going to lose the house, that she didn't know what to do, that Marcus didn't have a job yet and they couldn't pay. I let her talk for a while and then I told her, I have a proposal. If you want me to save the house, you're going to have to sign the papers to transfer ownership to me completely. The house is going to be in my name. I'm going to be the legal owner, and you're going to live there under my conditions. My mom started to protest, said they couldn't do that it was their house, that they'd lived there for 30 years. I told her it was that or foreclosure, to choose. She said she needed to talk to my dad, and I gave her 24 hours to decide. The next day she called and said they agreed, but they needed Marcus to be able to stay too. I told them no, that Marcus had 1 month to find another place, that I wasn't going to support my 3 one-year-old brother who'd never done anything for the family. My mom tried to negotiate, but I was firm. Either they accepted my terms or I'd let the bank take the house. They accepted, but I can tell you they weren't happy. I hired a lawyer to handle the whole property transfer. It cost me like $2,000, but it was worth every penny. My parents had to sign a bunch of papers, and the house officially passed to my name like 8 months ago. I paid the 3 months of back mortgage, plus other expenses my parents had let accumulate. In total, I spent like $6,000 to save the house, but now it was mine. The first thing I did was talk to Marcus, who was still living there. I told him he had 30 days to leave, that if he wanted to stay, he had to start paying me $800 a month in rent, plus his share of utilities. Marcus, of course, got furious. He said I couldn't do that it was abuse, that the house belonged to our parents. I showed him the papers that proved the house was now in my name, and I told him if he didn't like it, he could leave immediately. He tried to get my parents to intervene, but they couldn't do anything. My dad didn't even try to defend him, and my mom just cried, saying everything had gotten out of control. Marcus refused to pay, said he wasn't going to give me a penny. So I did what I had to do and started the eviction process. I gave him the legal 30-day notice, and when that time was up and he still hadn't left, I hired a sheriff to physically remove him. It was dramatic. Marcus was yelling and saying I was going to regret it, that I was a bad brother, all that stuff. But finally he left, took his things, and disappeared. The interesting thing is that like 2 months after Marcus left, Olivia left him. I found out through Aunt Clara, who now called me regularly to keep me informed of family drama. I guess because I'm more interesting than before. Olivia apparently had gotten tired of Marcus not getting a stable job and always blaming others for his problems. She went back to Texas and filed for divorce. Marcus now lives in a cheap apartment somewhere in the city, working at a call center or something. My parents sometimes go visit him, but basically he's alone. As for my parents, they still live in the house, but under my rules, I charge them $400 a month, which is less than it would cost them to live anywhere else, but it's enough to cover their share of expenses. I don't live there. I'm still in my apartment because, honestly, I don't want to be around them more than necessary. I visit every 2 weeks to make sure everything's in order and they're paying on time. My relationship with them is weird now, like cordial but distant. My mom sometimes tries to act like everything's normal, like nothing happened, but I can't forget. Every time I see her, I remember how they used me for years, how they kicked me out without thinking twice for Marcus, and how they lied to me about the second mortgage. My dad is as quiet as ever, avoids talking about the whole thing. What surprises me most, honestly, is how good I feel now. Yes, I lost like $15,000 or $16,000 during the years I paid their bills without knowing I was paying Marcus's debts, but in the end, I got a house for it. A house I can sell someday, or live in when I want. And most importantly, I'm finally living my life for me, not to please my parents or to compete with Marcus for their attention. Marcus has never contacted me since I kicked him out of the house. Honestly, I don't know if he'll ever talk to me again, and I don't care. I spent 26 years watching him be the favorite, watching him receive everything without trying, and I finally stopped playing that game. Some of my friends say I was too harsh, that I should have been more understanding of my parents' situation, but I don't see it that way. They made choices that hurt me deeply, and I simply set boundaries and protected my interests. The last time I saw my mom, like 2 weeks ago, she asked me if we could ever be a normal family again. I told her I didn't know what that meant, that we'd never been a normal family to begin with. She got sad but didn't say anything else. I paid for the internet service they'd been using because technically it's still my house and I need it to work when I go, and left. I guess in the end I learned that family doesn't owe you anything just for being family, and that it's okay to protect yourself, even if it means distancing yourself from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. I'm 27 years old now. I own a house, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I have control over my future. And that, honestly, is worth more than any family relationship I lost along the way.